Welcome to the Creation of Living podcast. I'm your host, Heather Nichols, and I'm delighted you're here. Join me for conversations and inspirations for creating way more in every area of your life and living. Welcome, everybody, to the Creation of Living podcast. I am here this week with a very special and different guest for me and for this podcast, Mark Pattison, who has been a lifelong athlete, serial entrepreneur, played in the NFL, and most recently actually took an expedition to the top of Mount Everest. And I wanted to interview him about being an athlete with business and basically with your life. Welcome, Mark. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Love being here. Thank you for having me.
And we were joking before because Mark is a long time friend of my partner, Brian, and we've never actually met. So he's a real person. You're a real person.
It is awesome. I love being a real person, and he's so highly of you, and it's great to finally meet you. We're virtual, and there's still some carryover a little bit from COVID, and this is the way we're actually communicating as a community, as the world.
Yeah.
And so it's so wonderful now, even though you and I are directly linked in right now, in person, but we're making that bridge, that step towards, regathering again, which is wonderful.
Yeah. So you just finished an expedition to the top of Everest a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah, I was literally standing on top of the world on May 23rd. Today it's June 28th, so a little over 30 days ago, I was on the top of the world. And it really completed a 10-year journey for me, which I was climbing actually the 7 summits around the world. So the 7 summits, for any of your listeners who don't know, are the highest peaks on each continent. So I literally traveled around the entire world. And when I first put this down as a big goal to go after, I thought it'd be 7 summits, 7 years. And what I didn't factor in is Mother Nature. I didn't factor in this thing called COVID, which shut the entire world down. And all those had, there was various adversity I had to go through. And that's, I guess, just life, where you go through peaks and valleys, but you have to keep, going forward. And even though there might be some detours in there, you still got to have your eye on the end prize, and which is what happened. And as you said, I was very, 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 very fortunate to be one of the few to actually summit Mount Everest this year. We were knocked off guard by, of course, COVID, which there was a huge outbreak at base camp. And it wasn't so much, I was vaccinated, but it wasn't so much about maybe a person being vaccinated and not getting it, but if other people within the expedition party and the Sherpa, none of the Sherpas we had 35 Sherpas that were supporting our group. If they got COVID, they just shut the whole expedition party down. And we didn't have that experience, in terms of we didn't have an infection outbreak within our expedition, within Everest Base Camp. And then the other thing was there were 2 cyclones that hit Everest. Which just brought massive amounts of snow and high winds and everything else. So, just to say you can actually make it is one thing, and then make it with all this, outside factors you can't control was another thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Meant to be, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So, what was it like standing on top of the world?
Well, that's a great question. I think, the probably the one question that is most surprising to people that I've been engaged with and are asking a lot of questions about it, is when I tell them I was there for 55 days. And just that alone is just a testament of endurance. And there's a lot of alpha dogs which meaning men and women, that have been very successful in other ventures in their life. And, as an athlete, when we kind of get into this a little bit further about talking about commitment, you're there and you don't have any of the conveniences. And so you're wearing down, your body's wearing down. I lost 25 pounds. And for me, I'm not overweight at all.
Yeah.
Unlike your partner, Brian, I'm a little,
Yeah.
so there's not that much, when he's talking about 25 pounds, that's significant. And you're showering maybe once a week in this jerry rig system where water's kind of trickling over your head. It's every night it's below zero, and you're sleeping on ice and rocks and bad food. And, you go without those conveniences that we're used to. And for some of these people, it was easy just to pull the plug and like, you're telling me in 24 hours, I can be back in New York having a steak, I'm out. We started with 21 climbers, and of the 21 climbers, only 10 of us made it. And probably half of those were just people that checked out within 45 days of this expedition. So going to your question, what was it like, for a lot of people in our group, at least, I know there was some elation and they were taking videos and high-fiving and everything, but for me, I had a different experience. And first of all, again, I need to set this up a little bit, because it's not like you say, hey, let's go climb a quick mountain or something outside of Boulder. This is you're when you're going to go for the top, you're projecting and based on weather forecasting about 6 days before. And so, weather is weather, weather, especially on Mount Everest, is tricky because it's changing, all the time, especially when these cyclones were hitting. And so we'd started this venture up the mountain around the 15th of May, hoping that we thought the 20th, 21st, something like that, there would be a window where we could actually go for it, because there was such high winds. And we're talking like 200 miles per hour. So it gets completely crazy up there. And ultimately, we did start off for the summit around 12:30 in the morning on the 23rd. And when I got up, there were heavy winds blowing 40 miles per hour. And the first thing that happened is I got snow blind within the hour. And so that affected my left eye. I literally could not see out of my left eye. And that came into play a little further up top. And then the second thing was I really wasn't eating much, over those 6 days, because now you're eating freeze-dried food. And I think you're a foodie.
Yes.
Yeah. And so you like really great nutritious, lettuce and fruits and vegetables. And, when you're eating freeze-dried food, it's kind of disguised as lasagna and macaroni and cheese and some of these other ones. And it's just hot water on top of sawdust. And it wasn't going down for me. And so I just continued to lose weight. And so when I got up, I got snowblind. I don't have much energy. I had just a little bit of granola, and then off I went. And it is uber steep. And you're in the death zone at 26,500 feet. And so ultimately, I did get to the top. There were challenges around that. It took me forever. I was normally one of the strong ones of the group, and that day I wasn't. I was like in last place. And where the snow blindness really kicked in too, and this is where energy is going in the wrong places, and which is towards your survival, which is you're tethered to the mountain on Mount Everest. Typically on these other ones, you're just somebody else. Like you and I might be tethered together. On this mountain, they have fixed lines. And so you're reaching down and you're clipping in. Yeah. And I was hard for me being blind in one eye to clip it. I couldn't see the rope, or there was 5 ropes from other expeditions, but 4 of them were bad ropes. They were frayed and they weren't complete and they weren't tied in on the other side. And so I really had to concentrate in. So by the time I got to the top, most of the people had left, and there's only 7 of us up there. There's 5 other people from another expedition, and myself, and my Sherpa, and so the exhaustion level I felt, and just like, oh my God, I was so wasted. I mean, I hadn't really eaten in days, and I'd now climbed up to 29,032 feet. I was standing up there, sitting there, and really the only thing I could think about was like, oh my God, now I have to go all the way back down.
It's not over yet.
It's only halfway there. And as it all turned out then, on my way down, I did run out of oxygen, and that was a major problem. I was exposed, and it took me 18 hours to do this. So think about if you're going to go exercise for 18 hours, right? But you're the tallest place in the world. Yeah. I mean, I'm not an endurance athlete per se. And that was a long time. And, I really had to tap into the energy of other people rooting me on. My daughter has epilepsy, and it was just like, I wasn't going to quit because she hasn't quit with her struggle around that. And it was just like, I kept saying to myself, today I'm not going to die. And, this is not that many times when you go through life, when you go so far to the edge, when you're like, this is a life and death thing. And, but at the end of the day, I did make it back down to my tent. It was late in the afternoon. And then that night was a whole nother like crazy experience. But yeah, I mean, I'm sitting back here today, absorbing and just starting to take it back in. I was so depleted. I was down 25 pounds. I was snowblind. There was so many things that were going on that I was just lucky to survive. And so it was really hard for me at the time, to really appreciate the accomplishment versus what I'm kind of starting to let that come in a little bit more right now.
Wow. I mean, we hear about how extreme these types of things are, and especially Everest. And it's a different thing to hear the story,
Well, yeah, and I'll tell you another just quickly, which all becomes extremely sobering, which is when I was in Antarctica in 2019, January, and I successfully summited the mountain, and my tent mate at the time was a guy by the name of Don Cash from Utah. And I think we're gonna get into this, but as an athlete, when you go forward and you do these things, what people see is this: oh, Mark summited Everest, but they did not see the million hours and hours and hours and hours of work that I was going up and down. I live in Emelia, Idaho. And so I'd skin up the mountain on skis and then rip off these skis and ski down. But, I went up 45 times. I mean, constantly in the mountain. I'd do 2 a day. So I trained. And this guy, Don, just wasn't really that much of a Freddie Fitness. And so he was really doing this to show off to his friends. But anyways, in 2019, later, 3 or 4 months later, after we summited together, he struggled on the mountain, but he did summit. He went to Mount Everest. And there was this big, from 2019, there was this iconic photo of this gigantic lineup that went all the way to the top. I think a lot of people, whether you're a climber or not, saw it around the world. And anyways, he ended up dying. And so as I was climbing up the Hillary Step, which is kind of that final third of the mountain, I literally stepped over his body and he's laying right there. And there's dead people sprinkled out. Down at 26.5 in the tent next to me, 6 feet away, was a guy that died on that 12th of May. And so, it's real. And so it's not just like when I played football and I'm tired, I'm hot, and at the end of the day, you're going to go to bed and you have a pillow and you're going to, have real food. And then it's a whole different level.
Wow. That's got to be really sobering.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to maintain your focus, when that's going on, just, amazing.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about the training and because what inspired me to have this conversation with you, one of the things is I've been looking at this a lot in my own life. It's like, what is it to have this sort of mindset of being an athlete? Now, this is like, the the extreme, right? What you've done, where you're literally like, I could die doing this. Everybody knows if you go up Everest, you may or may not survive. That's common knowledge, right? But for me, just playing with, I was mentioning before we started, I've been very athletic my whole life, and things have always come really easy to me. And just started figure skating in August, and it was like, as soon as you see these people, it's like you see these people whirling around the ice, and it looks very easy, and you don't realize, like they say in figure skating, you have to do a move 10,000 times to get it, and there's a lot of different moves, so it was the first time I had ever done something in my life where it was like, this, if I am actually going to be able to do what I would like to do here, this is going to take me years and a lot of practice and a lot of commitment. and diligence, and, you know, and it's actually been so fun for me, because it's like, I love having that kind of a challenge. And I've never challenged myself in that way. And it's really shown me, okay, I don't miss days of skating unless my body is like, needs a break, you know, or I can't get to a rink, which sometimes occurs, but I don't miss a day. And I make sure I've got that time in my schedule to go. And I've got coaches, and I do my, you know, I'm constantly practicing, and it's a little boring sometimes because you just do the same move over and over and over, but it's part of it. And like the energy of it has changed so much for me, looking at, okay, so am I willing to be this committed to the rest of my life? You know, where is this energy, this commitment, this focus not showing up in the rest of my life, with my business, with what I'm asking to create in the world, you know, with all these different things? It's like, what if I had that kind of commitment in the other things that I do? So I know you have a lot to say about this. So
no, I'm just listening. I love what you're saying. And, you know, really so for your listener, I grew up in Seattle, Washington, which ultimately I think had a major impact in terms of my mountaineering thing, which later in life, you know, has kind of come full circle. But from there, I went to the University of Washington, I played football up there. I was drafted by the Raiders. I played in the NFL for 5 years. I've run a number of different businesses, and now I'm an executive for Sports Illustrated, and recently this whole mountaineering thing. And so, one of I was starting to say is that I can tell you for sure that there are so many people out there, guys or girls, that are way more talented than me. I can promise you that. The guy you're with has got double the IQ. I mean, there's just so many. No, really. I mean, it's just like in sports and in mountaineering, all this other stuff. There's the only difference, really, and I'll get into the granular detail of this in a second, but really the only difference is between myself and many of the others is that at the end of the day, once I put my mind, this is the direction I'm going, I don't quit. And most people quit because it gets too hard. Yeah. And that's where it really gets in for me. You know, when I was in high school, and it was, you know, football seemed to come very naturally to me, and it was a different day back then, but at the same time, you know, I really didn't work for what was coming my way. I was just better than everybody at that level. And then I got to the University of Washington. I remember standing out there as a freshman, and now this is going through fall training camp. And we had a very famous, he'd become a Hall of Fame football coach, Don James. And I was out there freshman. I was 6'2", 181 pounds. I couldn't bench my weight. I was looking out there, and we had just gone to the Rose Bowl. And we had all these really big and strong, confident. I mean, I just wasn't even in that same category. And so what Don James taught me was something called the pyramid of success. The pyramid of success is something that John Wooden, the late UCLA coach who won 10 NCAA championships in a row in basketball. And so our coach taken that essentially that model, that pyramid, and there's 25 individual and team blocks. And at the very top, there's something called competitive greatness. And so for us, you know, our ultimate goal is to win the Pac-10 championship, and then go to the Rose Bowl and win the Rose Bowl. And to do that, the individual and team will get bigger, get faster, get stronger, do well in the classroom, be a great teammate, learn all your plays, and so you don't make sure that you screw it up on the playing field. And this is where you had to become a master of this pyramid. And really, when you get down to competitive greatness, what that really means, and something that just came out of your mouth as it relates to skating, is that you just absolutely love the process. And loving the process means there's going to be a bunch of good days out there for you, and there's going to be a bunch of bad days. But because you have a strong why on why you're there in the first place, you don't give up. And again, this is the reason why when I get down, I set my mind towards, and all those times I went up when it was cold, and miserable, on the mountain, but I kept going through because I knew this was going to put me in a position to win when I needed to. And he goes on to say, John Wooden goes on to say, be at your best when your best is required. And so for me, as I was going down this path, this goes back, well, all of these things I've done, by doing the things, the individual and team things you have to do to ultimately win and get to where you want, there's no certainty. There's no certainty that even though it took me 3 years of serious amount of dark days when I was a freshman, sophomore, junior in college, there was no guarantee that if I did all those things that I was ever going to step 1 foot on the field. Never, not one. And then I get in the NFL and I got cut and I got traded. I got brought back. I got everything that could possibly happen to me. But I just kept saying, I'm not giving up on this thing. And what just recently happened to me on these mountains, on Mount Everest, when, I felt strong, and then it got down and people have said, did you feel like quitting? I did. I mean, that went through as a mental battle all the way up and down that mountain. I was like, I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting for these certain reasons. And then, again, tapping back into all that amount of time that the work going up, because I didn't quit. I wasn't going to quit because I put in the work. And so I'm passionate about this because it's worked. And I just see too many people that check out. And we had that happen on our mountain. There were guys that were very rich executives that were like, I don't need this. I'm out of here. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's, to me, that's what it's all about. And if you can wrap your mind around that and really be committed to the process, they say it takes a little bit more to make a champion. And that to me is what that's about.
Wow. That's, brilliantly put. Yeah. Well, and, I facilitate, one of the things that I facilitate is a body of work called The Joy of Business. And I would say, if we apply this to business and to me, the business is how we create our whole lives. Like my business is my whole life. Yeah. And this is a huge piece, is like the joy of actually just creating. I mean, business is my creative playground and I love creating. I love the process of creating. And, it's with anything, whether it's business or like an athletic goal or anything that you're doing, it's like there is a result in, you do have a result in mind, like, most people do. And you also have to be willing for that to not occur. Like you have to be willing to go through years and years and years of training and not get to the top of Everest and still also be totally committed to making it happen. It's like, it's all of it,
Well, no, I'll tell you, it's interesting because when I started the Seven Summit journey back in, roughly 10 years ago, I was going through a rough patch in my life, right? But at the end of the day, we all go through rough patches.
Yeah.
And what the mountains brought me, and these are all the little incremental gifts that came my way. And this is what, if you don't step into the fear, if you don't have action creates reaction, if you don't go in some direction, you'll never grow. If you're not growing, you're dying, right? And so through the years of going to a mountain every year, I slowly found healing for me in the mountains in nature, right? And that was a huge, blessing that came to me. And then one day there's a guy that has this big podcast that said, "Hey, I heard about the former NFL player trying to be the first guy to climb the Seven Summit, and can I do a podcast?" I'm like, "What's a podcast?" And he goes, "Well, I'm coming over to your house. We're doing a podcast." I go, "Great." So we're having a conversation like this, and fast forward the clock, I started my own podcast 2.5 years ago, and I've got like 150,000 downloads now and 200 episodes. And the amount of people because it's about people overcoming adversity and finding their way, finding your summit is the name. And
oh, nice.
Yeah. And so the blessing from me to be where you are right now and talk to people who have no arms, no legs, or blind, have done these incredible things, to really bring kind of full circle around that. Maybe the stuff I'm going through isn't quite so bad, the perspective of that. And then the NFL is doing a documentary on my whole journey of Everest. And And part of that is because my daughter has epilepsy. And so I started raising money for this foundation here in Sun Valley called Higher Ground, but we created a program called Emelia's Everest. And so, the NFL is throwing in money. And so it's really, Tim McGraw has this song called Humble and Kind, which is one of my favorite songs. And he's got this line towards the end, which says something like, if you get to where you're going, make sure you turn around and help the next person in line, because you always want to make sure you're humble and kind. Yeah. Right. And so it's paying that forward. And so there's been some light shown on me because of my past, but it's been bounced off me and been able to do good for others while seeing my daughter get healed from the empowerment that this whole journey and putting her name up in lights has done for her. So anyway, I guess what I'm trying to say is that even though that there were some expectations originally, like it was pretty linear, like I want to climb a mountain, I want to become, it was all about me trying to get healed and I just got to go do this. And all these other blessings have come from it, and the amount of people and being all over the world. And you don't have to go climb, the 7 summits. You could become a skater. There's so many things you can do, but it's just like taking that step forward towards something positive in your life, like you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's amazing how, it translates into everything and it expands everything. Like just one of the tools that I play with a lot is adding to your life. Like, so just asking, people just asking like, what can I add to my life that would make it greater, or that would, allow me to create whatever would like to create, and just sort of letting things show up. And that was what skating was for me. People go, oh, you took it up again. I never skated as a kid. It wasn't like I used to do it and I picked it up. I was so totally out of the blue. Like literally one day I just had this idea and I was like, that is just so random, but okay, sure. I'll go ice skating and see what that's like. And, it wasn't something I always wanted to do. Nothing. It was just random. And I went, and it was so much fun that I was like, okay, I'm going to go tomorrow and the next day and the next day, and then I was like, oh man, it's going to take some work to do what I want to do. I'm a dancer. I've been dancing my whole life. And it's like, I want to, like when I look at skating and being on the ice, it's like, I want to just dance on the ice. And I still can't really do that because I'll probably be able to do that in a few years, but I've got these metal blades that I'm, dealing with. Right. So I got to learn how to move them, but I
got a quick story for you. Just because it ties into what you're doing, which is you have this drive to keep pushing and learning. And I've got mad respect. We have Olympic skaters that come to my little hometown, Sun Valley, Idaho.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The lodge, they're just amazing athletes to see these guys fly in the air and do turns and all that stuff. And, it was the time was a long time ago. And I think I was in about the 4th grade. Okay. And so myself, my sister, and some of her friends, we are going to go out to this local skating rink that's still there outside of Seattle. And the whole idea was we're going to take ice skating lessons. And this was like a 6-week thing. And, I'd go out there and skate around, but wasn't really into it. And at the end, when you get done, there's these different levels that you keep advancing up through. And at the end of the session of this class that we were learning how to skate, the entire class got moved up to level 2, except for me. It was awesome. And this is just a great example of, I didn't have any kind of a why. I really didn't care about it. And so if I would have got advanced, I probably would have stuck with it, because why not? Something to do. Right. But, like when they didn't advance me, I quit, and so it's just, again, it gets back that I didn't have that same drive towards this particular sport that you're talking about, that you can't wait, even though you can't do the triple axel or whatever it is yet. I don't think so. Or you can flip or whatever, even though you can't do that, it's something that you want to aspire to see how far you can actually push yourself.
Yeah. 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 So with business, cause I do so much coaching with people in their businesses. And it is like we say all the time, never give up, never give in, never quit. you will succeed. You will succeed. And it won't look like you think it's going to. It will never show up. Nothing will ever show up like you think it's going to.
Yeah.
And that's okay, you know. So let's talk a little bit more directly about that, because you've, you know, been an entrepreneur and really woven all of this into your life as well.
Yeah.
You want to? I don't even have a specific question.
Well, no. I think, you know, I started a gaming company in Seattle, and now I'm with Sports Illustrated. And the parent company is a technology company that we started 5 years ago, and so there's just the basic building blocks of you know, trying to get where you want to go. And it seems like it's never enough, but you're trying to get to that next plateau. And I go back to the same blueprint, pyramid of success. And the first thing you got to do, of course, is have a roadmap of where you're trying to go. And to me, when you start filling in those 25 individual team goals, is having a very clear idea that at the end of the day, when you wake up every morning, you know, you got to ask yourself, what's the best use of my time, and how can I get to my end goal in the most, you know, fluent way? And so that's one. If you're a salesperson, I mean, there's all these different categories of finance and all these other ones, but I think that the one thing I probably learned more than anything to be the great salesperson is to be the great listener. And the more that I listen, the more clues that are given, and off you go. I think another thing that has been really powerful in my life in terms of like trying to figure it out, because I didn't get my MBA. My MBA was just kind of jumping in. Yeah. But I've also learned in football, in business, in mountaineering, that success leaves clues. And that's a big one for me. So and so somebody might get that from a podcast. Somebody might get that from people. In my case, there's a lot of business leaders around Seattle that I know, that I've been able to associate with. It could be a book, but always having that thirst of knowledge helps you elevate and get to that next level. And then I guess the other thing is, for me, is that nothing is ever that mission critical. I mean, like when you think it can get any worse, it actually can. And so, and so you just gotta, like, unless you're like 6 feet under and with dirt, you know, you gotta just take the time to also get up out of your seat and go ice skate or go climb a mountain or doing something where you're not just stuck in front of a computer, so you can get your brain to refreshing and do that thing that you said about 20 minutes ago, which is how much you love to create. Yeah. Right. And that creative process, and then getting that flowing again, like maybe there's another way in. How do I get into that company? Who else do I need to go and network with? How do I penetrate, go around? I mean, I'm constantly doing, even at Sports Illustrated, I'm constantly doing that, where there's somebody out there, a company I want to talk to, and I'll go in through LinkedIn, or I'll figure out some other sneaky way that I'll get there. And then you got to deliver something, you know. People, there's so much stuff out there, and this little word that has really been effective for me, at least, and I'll leave it with this, is just point of difference. Like, what is going to make somebody sit up and pay attention to you that you're selling or offering that somebody else doesn't? How is that going to help them, and how is that going to help their lives? And that's what they want to know, not just about how great you are, but how you're going to benefit what they need and want. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. We talk a lot in the work that I do about acknowledging your difference, and the more you acknowledge, because everybody is unique, and everybody has something so beautiful and unique to offer if they're being them, you know, and they're really willing to show up and acknowledge themselves and acknowledge how different they are. And I think that's a huge aspect of success as well, is not trying to be somebody else, not trying to do it like somebody else. Yeah, getting lots of awareness, and like we're saying, like the clues from other people, and ultimately, knowing what it is that you desire to create and going for it. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, awesome. Well, I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but we will end.
Thank you so much for your time, and this just an amazing conversation.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I just a quick plug, and it's not a plug necessarily about me, but on my website, markpattisonnfl.com, we are going to be posting when the film is coming out. It's from NFL Films, which does an amazing job at storytelling. I have no clue what they're going to say or how they're going to say it, but I know there's a large part around Emelia, my daughter, who has epilepsy, and what we've been able to do there, and my kind of inspiration. And so for me to kind of keep going and not quit. And so how they weave that all together will be interesting. And certainly you and Brian are welcome to come. They're going to have a big premiere here in Sun Valley in September.
Oh, fun.
Love for you guys to be here.
Awesome.
But the kind of the net though is that it'll be interesting to see how they weave it. But all these things that you're talking about, it'll be more based on the mountain and Emelia and overcoming her thing. But I think there's lessons in there for all of us about not giving up and keeping it going and doing something for others that we can all. And I would have never even thought about any of this if I hadn't been affected by my daughter, and if I hadn't jumped into the fear and gone after the 7 summits and exposed myself to all these different risks. But by taking them, it certainly has made me a better person.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. How could you not? That's Well, your stories are really, really inspiring.
Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing the film. And so markpattisonnfl.com, we will put it in the show notes as well. Any other places where people can find you, favorite social media platforms or anything?
A lot of people seem to be connecting with me these days on same Instagram handle, Mark Pattison NFL. And I got to say this, we had people coming in by the hundreds every day, when I was on Everest, and in the amount of support and love that was shown. I can actually say that when you're up on Everest and you're that high up there all by yourself, and you're just trying to figure out how, I was the last guy up and the last guy down on that mountain. And I'm running out of oxygen and just trying to figure it out. Is this going to be the day? It's all those people that were there to support the journey. And, the things that I had said prior to me going up, you got this, I felt like Rocky or something, going up, and it really made the difference, I believe, in terms of my, success and failure. It could have gone either way, and it happened. It turned out the right way, but it certainly had a lot to do with the people supporting me.
Well, isn't that true in life too? Surround yourself with great people and your life is a million times greater.
It's so right. You said that so well.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you so much. And thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch y'all next time. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me for the Creation of Living podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it and leave me a review. If you would like more, you can find all kinds of resources and upcoming events at heathernichols.com. Until next time, remember, my beautiful friends, the world thrives when you do.